In this video, we're talking about imagery, what it is, how to find it, and some tips and cautions when you're looking for it and writing about it. So let's get started. If I say the waves crashed against the shore, can you hear them? You don't hear them with the ears attached to your head, but you can recall the sound and hear them with other ears, the ears of your imagination. The same with buttered popcorn, because you've smelled it before, and you can smell it again with the nose of your imagination. Imagery in writing is when the author evokes something in your imagination. Imagination, imagery, get it? Okay, here's the definition. It's the literary technique that uses descriptive language to create sensory experience for the readers. So sensory experience has to do with the senses. A lot of people jump to the five senses: sight, sound, smell, taste, and touch. And it's not wrong to do so. There are different types of imagery. Visual imagery. The Spam sat pink upon the plate. Its shiny gelatinous surface glistened in the candlelight. Auditory imagery. As the slice sizzled and crackled in the skillet. Olfactory imagery. The Spam's savory aroma filled the kitchen. Gustatory imagery. The first bite delivered a burst of salty and savory flavors that lingered. And tactile imagery. Handling the Spam revealed its slightly oily surface that left a faint residue on my fingertips. So a lot of people stop here when talking about imagery. They leave it to the five senses. But you don't just have your five senses in your imagination. What about nausea? Or cramps? Or the butterflies in your stomach? Or brain freeze? These are not really part of the five senses, but they are imagery. So let me offer you a broader way to think about imagery. In our minds, we have imaginary eyes and ears and noses and so forth, but we also have imaginary muscles and ligaments and stomachs and pancreases. We have a whole body in our imagination. So anytime an author evokes any part of that body in your imagination, it's imagery. So let's look at imagery as it functions in an actual awesome poem. This is Meeting at Night by Robert Browning. There's a lot of things going on in this poem, but a lot of it has to do with the imagery. The gray sea and the long black land and the yellow half-moon large and low, and the startled little waves that leaped in fiery ringlets from their sleep, as I gain the cove with pushing prow and quench its speed in the slushy sand. Then a mile of warm sea-scented beach, 3 fields to cross till a farm appears. A tap at the pane, the quick sharp scratch and blue spurt of a lighted match, and a voice less loud through its joys and fears. Then the 2 hearts beating each to each. So what did you notice? We've talked about the speaker of a poem previously. Did you notice the speaker? Not really. He's just kind of an observer. That's because this poem is all about the man in the boat and the woman in the farmhouse and their meeting at night. If you've had a little practice reading poetry, you would have noticed some other things about the situation. And you probably would have noticed the imagery. You've noticed these things because it's what's important about this poem. Everything in the poem revolves around the meeting between this man and this woman. It's a poem about love. So the imagery. It's got visual imagery. The gray sea and the long black land, the yellow half-moon large and low, the startled little waves that leap in fiery ringlets, the blue spurt of the lighted match. We see shapes, colors, and movement through the visual imagery. But there's not just visual imagery. We can hear the pushing prow of the boat on the slushy sand. We can hear the tapping on the pane, and the quick sharp scratch of the match, and the quiet voices of the lovers. Do we even hear the sound of their beating hearts? And let's not miss the warm sea-scented air. We can feel the warmth, and we can smell the sea. Poems don't often have this much imagery in them, but some do. And as with any piece of good writing, whatever is there for a reason. So the question that you should be asking yourself is why? Why so much imagery? This is one of the most important questions that you can and should be asking about anything in a good piece of writing. Why is this or that there? The best way to get at this is to ask, what is the effect? So, what is the effect of imagery in this poem? This poem is about love, romantic love at its early stages. So those who have experienced it know that this phase is often marked by a sense of excitement, curiosity, and heightened emotions. Everything carries a unique energy, creating a sense of euphoria and anticipation. When two people are in love, their whole perception of reality changes. Those of us observing it find it hilarious. You can see, hear, and smell this energy communicated in the poem through its vivid imagery, right? As he goes to her, all his senses are alive as he interacts with the world. It's all sparkly and zippy. We experience this with the speaker through the images as he experiences them. Pretty cool, eh? So teachers have this nasty habit of asking students to discuss or write about poems after a lesson. Here's a thing somebody wrote, now discuss the imagery. This usually means you need to find the images and then to try to articulate what they do in the poem. What is the effect? How does it reinforce the central purpose of the piece? So here are some tips and cautions if you ever have to do this. Avoid projecting personal images into the poem. The author creates the imagery and the readers engage with it. As the reader, don't start creating your own images, adding on to what the author has given you. Don't think about it being a blue 28-footer, because that's what your grandpa has. In your analysis, try to stick with the images that the author creates. And don't overlook non-visual imagery. Most imagery is going to be visual, but don't neglect the other sensory details like sound, touch, taste, and smell, and those other things. Don't mistake metaphors and similes and other figurative language for literal descriptions of sensory experience. In the poem above, you don't see any fire in the water. Those ringlets are fiery because they look like fire. But what do you actually see with the eyes of your imagination? It's the light reflected on the surface of the water. Answer me this, why is "he tasted death" not an example of imagery? Don't force interpretation. This means interpreting imagery in a way that doesn't align with the poem's overall theme, mood, or context. And don't overanalyze every detail. Reading too much into every word and description can lead to interpretations that really aren't supported by the text. I hope this helps you with understanding the basics of imagery. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.